I will now call to order the June 10th, 2014 meeting of the Traffic Review Advisory Board. Good afternoon and welcome. The Traffic Review Advisory Board reviews items of interest regarding parking and traffic within the city of Oshkosh. We are an advisory board, and our favorable recommendations today will go before the Oshkosh Common Council. The council can accept or reject any recommendation from this board. If the board does not recommend an item and you don't agree with our decision, you may discuss the item with any common council member, and the council member may sponsor a new ordinance regarding that item. All items recommended by this board require 2 readings before the common council. The first reading will take place on Tuesday, June 24th, 2014 at 6 p.m., and you will be allowed to comment on the item at that time, though the council will take no action. On Tuesday, July 8th, 2014 at 6 p.m., the item will be on a second reading, at which time the council will take action. You will again be allowed to speak to the item. For this afternoon's meeting, I will read each agenda item, at which time, if you would like to speak, please step up to the podium and give your name and address. I do ask that you keep your comments pertinent to the agenda item you are speaking to. The item will then come back to the board for discussion and action. Okay, first item is the approval of last month's minutes.
Second.
Becker.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Szynski.
Aye.
Herman.
Aye.
Schuster.
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
Okay, we have a couple items of tabled business. The first one, a request for no parking on the north side of Irving Avenue from Main Street to 20 feet west of Main Street. The current condition is 2-hour parking. However, you identified a state statute that
Right.
pretty much can remove this and just,
Yep. It's illegal to park within 15 feet of a crosswalk. So historically, I did some research. We don't always paint those, but in a case like this, I think what I would do is just have it painted so it makes it more visible, and I think that'll solve the problem.
okay.
We wouldn't need to take any further action.
Does that remove the whole parking width there then, or?
Just that 15 feet, so right from.
I mean, will there still be room for a car further down from that, or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they can get at least 2 vehicles in there, sometimes 3 depending on the length of it, so,
Yeah, I've seen as many as 3 vehicles. I was
Yeah.
driving by the other night, there's 3.
yeah. So we can, how do we go about just,
So I don't think we need to take any action on
Just-
that. We'll just paint it and make it
Okay.
more visible since it's already
okay, so it
prohibited.
can be just removed, okay. The next item of tabled business from a couple months ago is 3 different items relating to the bicycle plan on Sawyer from Buchanan all the way down to, what is it, Fifth Ave? 3 different sections?
Right.
Okay.
Yep, and I'll have Ben Kromauer from our planning department's going to do a presentation on that. He's been chairing the bike and pedestrian committee. So since my predecessor left, so he could go through the plan and did a pretty good job, I think, drawing this up and making the recommendation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Director, and committee and everything. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As was mentioned a couple months ago, we went through this process, and the bike lanes on Sawyer Street were thought of last year, and since we've hopped on this and since it's becoming a planning entity, and we went through the original process here, it was laid over upon recommendations with some further research into the project, and we feel comfortable enough to bring it back to you guys for recommendation. As it shows in your minutes here, we really do have 3 things we're looking at. The first one would be the actual striping, and then the second 2, number 2A and 2B, correspond to certain parking restrictions that would be lifted in one section and then actually removed in the other, so we'd be putting some restrictions in the parking. So what I'd like to do is just take a step back, talk about the bike ped plan, similar to what we did last time, and then going into greater detail about the actual design, and we've got some images for you to help portray that thought. So when we get going, I just wanted to bring up the original overall bike ped plan. This was adopted in September of 2011, and the whole purpose of this is to show the interconnected nature of the city and the proposed bike lanes throughout it. All of the different colors here are different options in the city, the purple being the predominant one that you can see on the map, but we also a little bit visible or harder to see is the blue and the reds that show different type of pedestrian and bicycle features in the city. Again, the whole purpose of this is to create a safe, interconnected system that's in addition to the transportation that's normally on the roadways. So in addition to the automobile traffic and the bus traffic. Because as we're beginning to see, biking is a trend that started in the early 70s and started gaining momentum again in this area, and it's got no end in sight. So we really want to promote that. But what the bike ped plan did do is create a priority list. Basically, let's get these roads done as soon as possible to provide the main arterials, if you will, of the area. And that's what we have listed here. This is a closer image of what would be considered the Sawyer Street area. This is Highway 41 in the Fox River. To the north, we have the Municipal Golf Course, and to the south, we have 5th, and the extreme southern end is 9th, to give you an idea of what we're looking at. So what we see here is the black is already existing bicycle lanes. We have the new tribal trail and some of the ones near the campus area, including the Riverwalk. The blue would be proposed bike lanes in the future, and the red being the Sharrow option. The Sharrow option is where you're driving and bicycling in the same lane, but it's designated to show that this is an option and you're supposed to work with both. Our area in green here, from West 5th north to just shy of Sawyer Creek on Fillmore, is our proposed bike lane that we're going to be installing. Now with it, we have some unique circumstances. We actually have 3 different design criteria when we're going through this proposal. The first one is to the north of what would be considered the Rush Porter area to Sawyer Creek Bridge. This portion actually has a boulevard system to it, so it's a unique design challenge when it comes to that. The second section is from Witzel to that North Porter or the Rush Porter area, and then the third one being south of Witzel to West 5th. So we have 3 different design criteria when we started going through this proposal, and that's actually what made it very difficult to do, because we have shifting parking lanes, we have shifting driving lanes, we have different traffic volumes, and all those things we want to take into consideration when we're doing this, because the last thing we wanted to do was inhibit the movement of traffic to the point that the road can't function as a complete street. A complete street being a road that functions with pedestrian movements, bicycles, mass transit, automobiles, the whole 9 yards. And that's the goal of the bike ped plan, is to adhere with those restrictions. So when we get a little bit further, this is just some of the guts of the work that we had to do to take a look at it. You know, we have the right-of-way widths of the specific sections here. What I really wanted you guys to focus on is this portion here, the parking availability. So in that first portion, the third portion from 5th to Witzel, you have very few parking restrictions. The majority of it is available for parking, with some restrictions as you get closer to the intersections and closer to Witzel. But for a good portion of it, we do have parking. And then from Witzel to Rush, that main section by Lourdes High School and the Catholic school system, it's mostly prohibited. We have very little parking on the street. And then when you start getting north of Rush, then we start to have some restrictions, and of course by Sawyer Creek Bridge, which bike lanes aren't even going to, you have no restrictions. The bridge is not wide enough. And I'll go into greater detail about this lower one. This is just some of the driving options, and I actually have some images that'll show it better than the analysis. So again, we have, in this case, you have 4 different parts that had to be design criteria. The board here recommended that we take a look back at the parking issues and then some of the intersection concerns. So the intersection concerns were with traffic safety and pedestrian movement safety, and parking concerns, especially near the Rush Porter area. And there's some concerns that we feel comfortable that we've adapted. So going into it, you can see that we're not proposing any sort of bike lanes north of Fillmore on the east side of the road or north of Buchanan on the west side, and that's to help accommodate traffic to get through and over that narrower bridge. As we continue down, this number 2 areas where we had considerable concerns about parking. One of the concerns is we have a business here that has no on-street or no off-site parking. They only have on-street. So our new proposal idea is, in essence, to continue the boulevard system down. North of Porter Rush, we are allowed to have a parking lane, the bike lane, and drive lanes. We want to continue that theme down to Porter, which will then allow parking on the street for those businesses. So in essence, you're eliminating the boulevard but you're striping it as if there was still something there, a physical barrier between the two. In this case, yellow paint. And then we'll be having the bike lanes and the parking lanes. Second, these are two different images. One concern was the Southland Sawyer Street intersection, and the second one was the Witzel Sawyer Street intersection. The reason why these were concerns is because there's traffic lights, there's a stop feature that we had to try to negotiate. How do you deal with bike lanes getting to intersections? So what we did is, under the recommendation of the group, we thought of 3 different ideas for it. We have option A, B, C. Option A is our preferred media. This was the original one we wanted to talk about, but we felt it was necessary to show a couple different options. So I'm going to apologize for the black and white. We tried to get some color, but it didn't quite show up well enough. But here's in essence what happens here. You're driving down them, and as you get closer to the intersection, we'll imagine this is Witzel and Sawyer, the bike lanes does stop, and you merge into traffic. So you have about a 250-foot space here to safely merge into traffic. If you're going to be turning left from a bicycle, you're going to go into the left lane. If you're going to go straight to the right, you're going to go straight into the right lane. The reason why we have this and it's a preferred option is because in these other 2 options, what happens is that you have a designated bike lane going down one side in option B with the drive lane in the middle, and in option C it's the opposite. With the straight and right turn drive lane on the right, the bike lane merges to the middle. What happens is if a bicycle wants to turn right or a car wants to turn right and the opposite wants to go straight, you're going to have a collision, and that's not something that we want to promote. So to take care of it, you just eliminate the bike lane option short of the intersection, you merge into traffic, and then afterwards you immediately hop back into the bike lane and you'd continue on your way. And again, this is a blown up image of what that could look like in color. So we can see that the green here is the actual bike lane striping. The yellow, or this appears darker brown in color, would be the drive-in lane option. And as we talked about before, the 3 options were to have the parking, and I'll actually zoom back a little bit here to give you a better idea. When we're getting to north of Rush, where the actual true boulevard system is, we're going to have a center drive lanes, bike lanes, and then park lanes on the outside of the roadway. At Rush, it would collide down, and it would turn into a center turn lane option, which we can see right here. It allows for the joint left and joint right, or joint left turns from both directions. And then lastly, let's see if I can get it here. South of Witzel, I apologize for the poor image at the bottom here. South of Witzel, you'd be getting back into something very similar to what was north of Rush, where you'd have the center driving lanes, the bike lanes, and then the parking lanes.
Before we move on, quick question. South of Witzel on Sawyer, 1 traffic lane at that point, southbound?
Yes. If you're heading southbound on Sawyer Street, it'd be 1 traffic lane, and we'd be putting in the bike lane and then the parking option. And then same with northbound. You'd be going into 1 lane, and then you'd have the parking in the bike lane.
Was any consideration given to throughput on that intersection? Because right now I believe it's 2 southbound in that intersection.
Correct. Right now, if you're going southbound, if you're heading south on Sawyer, crossing Witzel, you do have the 2 options. You can go. Actually,
it's left turn only as you
it is
approach
left
that
turn
lane,
only.
But there's 2 lanes on the other side of the intersection, if I'm not mistaken, which allow. I could be wrong. I don't know.
Unless I'm mistaken, I believe it is no parking, or it is parking option on both at that side of the road.
Okay.
It's just nobody does park there. So they do allow for the parking right now, and we would
Okay.
accommodate that parking.
Okay.
So really, we're just going to recap those requested recommendations. And the big one is this one right here, number 2A. We're actually going to be allowing additional parking near some of those businesses of concern. I'll go back just a little bit here so you guys can get an idea of where this is. This is the business of concern that has no parking off-site. Currently, right now, this portion right here has no parking. For whatever reason, we can't find documentation on why that happened. We're looking at opening that parking back up. So they'll actually have parking down the whole block instead of having parking for the 2 lots north of that one, no parking, and then parking south of there. We're just looking at cleaning it up, really. And
there's about a 100-foot section there. The only thing I could think of is because it goes from the boulevard, it transitions there, so you shift a little bit. So I think maybe at some point they thought somebody might have requested taking it out, but there is enough room there where I don't think it's really a hazard.
Yeah. And in this case, with the striped bike lanes, they tend to guide traffic, so you would have less of that issue with cars possibly doing something where they shouldn't. And I would just like the last image we can put on here is just a reminder that this is part of an interconnected system, that this one road is one of the only north-south true corridors that really connect these primary east-west routes, one being a Taft-Campbell area on 5th, 6th area, and then up towards the river and the Lakeshore Golf Course and the Municipal Golf Course. It's one of those only north-south ones that connect a large portion of the city. We do have one on Westfield that's proposed, but it does break a little bit, and it doesn't have those intersections that are safer to cross because of lights. You start getting traffic in an uncontrolled situation, it does promote unsafe driving. So at that, I'll bring it over to you guys and welcome any questions that you may have.
I was just wondering, like, how was Fifth chosen as the street to go in the east-west direction? I see, I drive down 9th and see a lot of people on bikes. So, I mean, there's really nothing on Fifth people would be biking to, obviously 9th, and there's some stuff on 6th.
That's actually a really good question. The reason why 5th and 6th was the option is that, as you can see here on the priority plan, 9th you cross over the highway. At that point, the right-of-way on 9th is very narrow, and it's a very large amount of traffic. And there was quite a bit of debate when the original plan was happening, and they thought, let's bring it up 7th, Lilac to 5th, and jog around. The reason why 5th and 6th are preferred is because, one, it gets closer to the downtown area. There's actually quite a few intersections that give 5th and 6th priority over the north-south roads, so you're not constantly stopping at every block. And it does bring the bicycle flow off of 9th. And it still provides that east-west connection, because this is not only a recreational system, it's a transportation-based system in its own right.
Is there going to be more signage put up, like, to direct people to, like, get off of, like, 9th to use the bike on?
Yes. Part of the bike ped plan and our goals for this year is to create mapping and signage options, try to get as much of the known routes and proposed routes out to the public. So even if they're not officially mapped yet, they can still be used in that fashion, at least to start getting the promotion out there. And then we're going to try to ramp up our installation of these bike routes to help facilitate that traffic flow.
Yeah, one other thing not regarding to this, but the bike plan is, by the college, I see, like, the one-way streets. I see a lot of people biking on the opposite side of the street going the other direction.
Well,
I don't know if there could be more signs or
on
enforcement or
Sawyer
something,
Street,
or-
which is our priority for
Yeah.
today, they are responsible for biking and following all the rules of traffic. That's actually a law and a requirement from not only the state statutes, but from the municipal. So throughout the whole city, they're required to travel as they would. It wouldn't be recommended that they'd go against the traffic.
I know, well,
Especially
a
on
little
Sawyer
off
Street,
topic, but,
they're
since,
going to be sticking
you
to the
were with
proper
us,
side of the road.
I don't see. Thanks.
All right.
Just one question, Ben. Businesses had a concern the first time. Have we talked to them? Have you or anybody from your committee gone and talked to them and say, this is what we're proposing, and they're okay with it?
We didn't talk with all of the business owners. We had one sit-down meeting with Bob Biebel, supervisor of Lourdes.
Okay.
He was concerned about it. We did talk to him, and I think we've taken care of some of his concerns. I do believe that the Transportation Department did field some conversation from
Okay.
additional
They did talk
businesses.
to- Well, they actually,
And,
I think that addressed the concerns you had.
Yep, I am hopeful that our new plan has alleviated some of their concerns.
They did sit down, explained it, and invited them to come today so they could see it in PowerPoint. It's
Sure.
easier to see in colors.
Okay.
I think
Very
that
good.
alleviated the only parking that, so just to clarify, so the requests are for number 2, which is the striped bike lanes. 2A, which we talked about, is at 100 feet that I'm not sure why there's restricted parking there currently. 2B, that is going to, 2B eliminates a little bit of parking, but a lot less than the prior proposal in front of the church.
That's correct. 2B, the original proposal was from south of the actual church building to all the way north would have been restricted parking. In this case, we've only eliminated a small portion of it. It comes out to being about 4 to 5 stalls, and the reason why is because we have to at some point transfer from no parking to parking and allow for that turn off. So unfortunately, we did lose a little bit of parking there, but it's much more preferred than the original that lost all the parking.
And then the only other debate, which I actually took off of here, was there's the loading zone in front of Roosevelt, which I decided I think we should just leave it as a loading zone. I know Ben and I talked about maybe making that permitted parking, but I think the school would prefer to have it a loading zone. And my predecessor had some concerns about, people getting in and out of their vehicles. However, the more I thought about it, they're traveling north, so if they're dropping kids off, they're going to be getting out on the curbside.
Curbside.
So I don't
That's correct.
think that would be a huge concern, so I actually took that one off. I don't think we need to change that.
That looks good to me.
Ben, do you know how many bikers currently use this section or would use it?
Unfortunately, we don't have those counts. We're hoping to be able to do some analysis like that. Our ability to have staff be able to go out into the field and get those counts is very limited. So we're trying to develop a policy with hopefully East Central Wisconsin helping us out on getting some of that. But right now, we don't have any traffic counts for bicycles, just the auto traffics.
Ladies, did you want to comment to this? Are you satisfied with the presentation, or?
My understanding is that parking will be allowed for 4 or 5 cars in front of 417 North Sawyer Street. And that was my concern.
Yeah, because 2 months ago, that was my concern too, a business losing all their parking. So it looks like they made some accommodations to keep that parking there. And are they correct, is it about 4 or 5 stalls that would?
That's correct. It would be, originally, it was just this portion right here. We've actually accommodated
more.
additional parking stalls
Okay.
to help.
Okay.
Correct. The
Okay.
business directly north of you would be allowed, under this new provision, to have some parking in front of it if they saw fit, at which point you could also use that on-street parking for your businesses.
Thank you.
Because these are broken up into actually 3 different subsections, do we have any discussion on item number 2 from Fillmore and Buchanan? Oh, wait, okay, now I'm getting confused.
Because they're all related, Tim, and they're all twos, you can make it as one motion.
Just do it as one, okay.
You're allowed to do that.
Okay. Anybody have anything up?
Move 2A, and 2B.
I'll second it. One question I have is, do we need to identify which option on the intersection? Option A is the preferred option based on their research and their studies. I would tend to agree because the other 2 are going to getting people run over out there, I think.
Is 2A considered option A?
Correct.
So that's part of it?
I think, yeah.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't specifically spell
We don't
out.
have it explicitly written that option A is the one preferred within our actual items here on the agenda. 2A, or option A, was the one that we preferred. That's the one that's designed on the PowerPoint. That's the one that we would prefer to put in. So if you guys wanted to write it in saying that motion to accept with that as being the addition, that could be acceptable. It's our preferred design anyway.
Okay.
That'll work.
So, was that you that moved it, Dan?
Yep.
You want to add in your option preference? Or do we amend it, or?
I would look for our parliamentarian expert.
Yeah, I don't have my Robert's Rules of
Technically,
Order
we
here,
would have
so-
to amend it. We could just make an amendment to 2A, and the board can decide if they want to use option A, B, or C as the option for 2A. It'll be an amendment, it's a request for, on, as is, and then just add the last sentence, which option would be what this board recommends as the amended option to 2A.
Move to amend 2A to include the option enumerated A in the presentation,
I'll second
the
that.
attached materials.
There you go.
So, any discussion on the item as amended? Okay, so we'll have to vote on the amendment. So if you want to call the roll on the amendment motion.
Okay, Becker.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Szynski.
Aye.
Herman.
Aye.
Schuster.
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
Any further discussion on the entire item as amended? I guess you can call the roll on the full package.
Okay, Becker.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Szynski.
Aye.
Herman.
Aye.
Schuster.
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
Okay, in the new business, we have a request to change the speed limit on Murdoch Avenue east of Bowen Street to 25 miles an hour at the intersection. Current condition is 30 miles an hour until Hazel Street.
Move.
Second.
Really, all this amounts to, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, is moving the sign back a couple hundred feet?
Yeah, so we'd change it from, it's based, right now it changes after Hazel, so it moves it to the intersection. It's about there's Grove and
Evans and
Yeah.
about 2 or 3 streets
Yep.
west.
Street, yeah.
I'm not sure, that was a request from the neighborhood association. I'm not sure why it changes. It actually changes after the school zone, which is kind of odd, but.
No.
But there's the bowling alley there, and then it's pretty much residential.
Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Becker.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Szynski.
Aye.
Herman.
Aye.
Schuster.
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
And item number 4, request for traffic signal at the intersection of Elmwood/Murdoch/Vinland Street. Current condition is partial stop control. And I think we have a couple residents here that would like to speak.
Yeah, just for those who aren't familiar with that intersection,
Can you give us your name and address,
Scott
please?
Schmidt, 1112 Elmwood.
Okay.
I have to pass this intersection, minimum of 4 times a day, taking kids back and forth to school, throwing a couple basketball practice and stuff like that. So I get this section quite a bit. I have witnessed just this year 5 now accidents. Hold on, probably another dozen scary near misses. Up on the curbs and slamming on the brakes. I've been doing this for a couple years now. Go through this intersection all the time. It's scary, but it's also our inexperienced drivers, from the high school too. So the scary times are only the beginning of school and when school gets out. I don't think it's anything that needs to have a permanent stoplight put in, but flashing lights, because I know you want to keep traffic flowing. But on those 2 times of the day, it is brutal. And for anybody who's ever gone there, I don't have the statistics to back it up, but it's bad. And it's not a 90-degree intersection.
Geometry is horrible.
It's angled, so there's a lot of confusion who has the right of way. And again, throwing inexperienced drivers, and it's a free for all. Literally, it's a game of frog every day. And even an experienced driver like me, it's tough just to get across. I tell my daughter who's now driving, go around school. Don't take that intersection. So.
Yeah, this one, and some of you probably have more history than I do. Been on the board for a while, but it looks like it's come up pretty consistently, a request for signal at that intersection. So I did do some research, and I talked about it more with the annual accident study too. It looks like we had about 8 accidents there in 2013. So as far as the threshold for the crash rate, it's not quite to the yellow area yet, but it's come up frequently. I know it looks like I'm going back through the notes of my predecessors. In 2012, the Traffic Review Board approved a possible road diet on Murdoch Avenue. What a road diet is, I'm sure some of you are familiar with it. It's basically putting a shared left turn lane. So it'd be 1 lane each direction and then a shared left turn lane. So it looks like there was a lot of work done on that, and I think where we were at with it from the notes I have is that we were talking to the state about, because it is a state highway on that portion of the road, in trying to get their approval. So I brought it up with the state again last week, so I actually have the correct person to contact, and so I'm going to have some further discussions with him about that concept. The concerns that I've found are they wanted to get some data on truck turning movements, and then also it looks like my predecessor had done some research on the road design for 2033, and it looked like the volume wasn't going to be so substantially increased that doing the road diet would be a hindrance to the traffic flow. But we have to get the state buy-in, and then also just make sure that with the planning that the road design isn't planned for increased traffic. One concern that came up is, and I have to check with the state on that too, if that's an alternative route for 41. So I just thought of that recently, so I need to check with them on that too. Talking with our engineering folks, they thought that might be a hindrance too.
I think it might be.
So that was, historically when this has come up and we've done the analysis, a traffic signal hasn't been warranted. I did have the traffic counters put out there so I can look at it again, but I'm guessing that traffic volume hasn't changed substantially. It's probably going to come up unwarranted for a traffic signal again, which brings me back to when I looked at the accident analysis too. That intersection comes up, the one with Wisconsin comes up, so I guess maybe looking holistically at that stretch of the road from Algoma to Jackson, and working with the state and see what the feasibility of the road diet is. I guess that'd be my recommendation at this point.
Is there, can OPD pull up the crash data year to date to kind of get a picture of what it's done since the first of the year? Because I've personally witnessed 4 crashes there since the first of the year. And there's a real sight distance problem there now with a new fence that was put up on the corner on a facility that went up there. And I got to believe that that's causing some problems, because if you're stopped at the stop sign south on Vinland Street, you can't see to the east what's coming, because that, even though that's a picketed fence, you're looking down at it's solid, and you literally have to pull your vehicle out into Murdoch to see around that fence to see what's coming.
Okay.
And so I don't know if that's part of the issue, but I think that from what I've seen just this year, it seems that the traffic crash numbers are going up at that intersection.
Yeah, I definitely can look. I have access to that too.
Okay.
I can look at it.
It's just out of curiosity, because we're only halfway through the year, and I've seen 4 of them. So, and if you're driving through there, you've probably seen a couple too. And
I know you guys all know this. I'm a former corporate little guy with the, sometimes the actual accident is just a statistical number. Think of the near misses that are also
yeah.
right there, and someone's going to die.
So I'm thinking, because of the research that has to be done on this, we'll need to table this item for a future date till we can get all parties involved in this together and see how we need to proceed.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to put it on here, because historically what the board has done is they've looked at it annually when we look at the accident. So each year they look at the request for traffic signals along with the annual accident report. So I can do some research on how many crashes there have been since the beginning of this year, and then I also will contact the state transportation planner and get his input on. Like I said, I had another meeting with him on a different topic last week, and I brought it up, and he said to call him and we'll talk about it some more. So, and see what our options are there.
Does the city have available any photographic equipment that can do time lapse of a certain area? I know that I've seen them put up for different projects where they've been looking at things. I don't know if it's been the city that's been doing it, or I think they actually had some at North Main and New York here last year.
We do have the cameras where we can do traffic movement analysis. So there's a number. Well, there's a few different ways of doing the traffic counts. We can do them manually. We can do them with the tubes, or we also have a camera. So that we've actually used that's what we used at Main and Merritt, because the camera's better when you want to capture turning movement.
And I think that at this intersection, a camera and seeing exactly what people are encountering, even if it's not a true crash where there's contact made, people, if it's a near miss, they're not reporting it, and so I think, your end data, might not reflect what's truly going on out there, so
Sure, we can do this.
more curiosity than anything.
Can I interject something, just too with the camera? It really kind of is just like, again, when school lets out and when school starts, and also consider, school's ending in a couple of days.
Yeah. But I've noticed a lot of truck traffic coming down Vinland Street, too. They're doing a lot of utility work, underground boring and stuff, so there's a lot of big trucks coming off of Vinland, too, and I'd be curious to see what that does out there.
Yeah, and I'll do some more research too. I mean, I guess the road diet's my preference right now, and we'll see how that goes. But
Yeah, I mean, that makes the most sense.
because as I looked at, and when we talked about, and I'm sure you looked through the accident report from last year, there were, I think, a few crashes and it looks like historically every year there's been some crashes related to turning left off of Murdoch, and you can't see the curb lane.
Yep. So can I get somebody to,
I'll make a motion to table it till we get further information and hear what the state has to say also.
Second.
Becker?
Aye.
Haas?
Aye.
Kwasinski?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Schuster?
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
okay, and staff statements.
Okay, I just want to update you on a few issues from the last meeting. The chevrons were installed on Fuller Street, so you probably noticed that's taken care of. So we put those in the middle of May. So there's 6 of them. So that is out there. And then the flashing yellow, we talked about doing a PSA. Those are placed now on the city website under Hot Topics, and there's actually a pretty nice demonstration you can click on there that shows what they mean.
About a couple weeks ago.
So the state had provided that to me, so that's out there. And it's also, Emily was going to put it on the cable channels bulletin board as well. So that's done. We had a little bit of discussion at the last meeting about changing the speed limit on 20th and why it went from 35 to 30. That takes place at South Park. From the information I was able to gather, it looks like it was related to when Traeger was opened or somewhere along there was a request, it must have been to lower the speed limit towards the school. And from what I can find, it looks like South Park was chosen as the point to do that because there's so many driveways in that area. I guess I didn't really see a reason to change it right now. If we ever do decide we'll change it, we're probably going to have to get some public input, and because there was obviously concerns with the speed limit from the school. I think what I've heard from talking to people is that usually when you do the speed studies, you use the 85th percentile of traffic, and it actually could support 35, but because of the schools and the public input, it was set at 30. So I guess that's my recommendation. If the board down the line wants to look at it again, we can, but I think there's going to be a lot of input to that. And then the last thing is the annual traffic study. So historically, my predecessors have done this report each year. So I put this together for 2013. And basically just a couple highlights. I mean, you can read through it. The number of accidents have remained relatively unchanged from 2012 to 2013. They did go down a little bit, about 60 or so. But overall, that's at the intersections. But overall, in total, they've stayed about similar. The good news, though, is the injuries have went down. We had 549 in 2012, and they went down to 398 in 2013. I think that's showing that the intended consequence of the roundabouts, that the number of incidents is still relatively unchanged. And I believe a lot of that is due to the newness of the roundabouts, but they were expected to reduce injuries, and it looks like that is happening due to the number of the less direct impacts and the right angles at an intersection versus a roundabout and the slower speeds. So that's the good news. The injuries have went down. And then looking at the high crash locations, the roundabouts are still at the top of the list, but again, as the last couple of years when we've looked at it, they have traditionally been up there since we've installed them, just due to the newness and drivers getting familiar with them. However, there again, the good news there is some of the more established roundabouts like the Washburn and 9th and the Washburn and Witzel, you can see that the number of incidents have went down significantly. I mean, they're in half. So I think with the roundabouts, them being so new and with the state input, there's not a lot we can do with it right now. I think we'll just have to keep an eye on that and see. Hopefully the rest of the roundabouts, that the newer ones, will see the crash frequency go down as well. So that's kind of the roundabouts. The traffic signals then, if we look at those, I did do some more analysis on the higher, and when we look at it, we look at two things. The state generally looks at the crash rate, and then you can see there that they look at the, if it's 0 to 1.4, it's normal to typical, 1.5 to 2, it warrants watching, and then over 2 warrants investigation. We don't have any that are over 2. We do have one that's between 1.5 and 2 that would warrant investigation, and that's the Murdoch in Wisconsin. And then the second factor, which Mr. Strong, my predecessor, started looking at, was the expected crash frequency, and that's a newer measure, and that's using an algebraic formula for the safety performance factor of the road. So what I did is I just looked at the intersections where they were over the 1.5 for the crash rate and or they were over 200% for the safety performance factor of the intersection. And what came up is that Murdoch in Wisconsin, which again gets back to looking at the road diet, I think. The South Park and 20th, there were a lot of rear end accidents there. 4 of them were weather related, so I couldn't really put anything together from a traffic design standpoint that would help minimize the accidents there. We had Algoma in Wisconsin. Again, there was a couple rear end accidents. There wasn't anything really related to the intersection design. Maine and Murdoch, there really wasn't a pattern there. There was a couple failure stops at red lights, a couple rear ends. And then the Washburn and Westtown, that's a busy corridor there with all the businesses. So these weren't necessarily all at the intersection, but when they do their report, they usually relate it to the nearest intersection. So that, again, isn't anything I think we should be concerned about. And then I looked at the stop controlled intersections and the ones that warrant investigation that met those 2 criteria were the Elmwood, Vinland, Murdoch, which we discussed. And then this South Park and Venture, that's on again, off again. It's come up, it looks like occasionally over the years. So that's one I'm going to put on my agenda to study further with doing some traffic counts and seeing what's actually happening there. And then from there, I didn't get into the, after there we could get into the yield on the non-controlled intersections, but there weren't any numbers that were high enough really to justify further investigation. So I think out of that accident study, what I've taken away is that we need to look at that Murdoch, Algoma, and Jackson. I think that should be our priority, the next thing to look at.
I want to talk about a few of those. On that Venture one, you got a couple conflict points. It's a T intersection, but you got that gas station driveway just a little bit offset, and then you got the hotel driveway. I use that intersection almost every day, and a lot of times, I also use that gas station. So, if you're pulling out there, you got people turn into each other from off of Venture and the gas station from either direction, and occasionally from the hotel as well. So, I mean, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to do something with that.
Sure. Yeah, and you're right, that's because it serves a number of the retail and commercial.
Maybe if you could, like, move the gas station driveway further down towards the dentist office or something, that might alleviate some of it too, I don't know. But like I said, you got several conflict points, not just the Venture and South Park, you got those two businesses across the street.
Sure. Yeah, and the majority of them, it looked like they were related to turning left from Venture
Yeah,
on the
it's like
South
a
Park.
lot of times I just take the long way around and go back down Osborne, circle out back north on Kohler. And then on the Kohler 9th, I just noticed last week, because I don't normally go through the roundabout going north on Kohler, but that you got one lane's a left turn lane, the other one is straight through. But a lot of people are going straight through that left turn lane. Then if you're turning like off 9th, going north on Kohler by the Red Robin, the roundabout is only like designated for one lane. It's not demarcated for two lanes, where it's probably wide enough for two. But people are coming from that left turn lane here, and then they're conflicting with the people making a right turn to go north on Kohler. If they maybe have better signage on that left turn only lane on, going from Kohler west on 9th. See what I'm talking about there? There's going northbound on Kohler, you've got the one lane is supposedly a left turn, but people don't real obey. It's hard to notice it. It's just on the pavement. I don't think there's any signage.
Okay.
Or if you maybe demarcated, right at the side they're going towards Red Robin, like I said, it's just like one big lane. I don't know if they could maybe demarcate that into two, because like I said, people are just going right down, going out of that left turn lane and going straight through it, and then they're going right down the middle of it, conflicting with traffic. I've seen probably like a half dozen incidents like that. And then on the 44 and 41, the one thing I've noticed is when the lights are on flashing, like after hours and stuff, is most of the people that are getting off of 41 are going to the right, and then that doesn't they don't have access to the light at all. Or even when the light is on, it's actuated. And since they're going to the right, it's just a yield sign. And like I noticed, like when I go to like the shopping out the outlet mall, like I really noticed it was really bad on Black Friday. You got a steady stream of traffic, and nobody's letting anybody in. So you got like a steady stream getting off too, trying to merge in here. I don't know if what you could really do about it, but I noticed that as a big conflict is that the people just have a yield sign, whereas like they're not actuating the light because they're just going up to the yield sign.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes any sense, but you know what I'm saying? Like people are all going, because most of the people getting off there are going to the right, because like in both directions, if people want to go into town, they usually get off at 9th. So if they're getting off there, otherwise, because you've got to back down at a goofy angle down South Park, so they're usually going in that direction. And the other way, too, like if they wanted to go to the outlet mall from the south, they get off at 26. Like I said, that yield sign kind of doesn't people get to the yield and it doesn't actuate the light then.
So that's when you're heading northbound, and then you're getting off on 44?
In either direction, like if you're going northbound, it's like so both directions they don't actuate the stoplight because they just go up to a yield sign.
Right.
So I mean the light is normally activated when somebody comes up to it.
Right. Okay.
I'm just saying I've noticed that on a few times.
Yeah, I can look at that. It's actually it's currently a state-controlled intersection, but I can bring that up with them too. Highway 44 is currently, it's a state road.
I don't know, like I said, if you could put in some kind of a thing that when people trip that, they turn on the light too or something, maybe for a shorter signal.
Okay. Yeah, I can mention it to them.
But, like I said, I've seen that happen a number of times, when there's, people are sitting there and then they're getting impatient.
Anything else?
I wanted to bring up one more thing about a couple of crosswalk situations in my neighborhood. I live right by South Park, and on 11th and Georgia, it's kind of you got like the curb cutout things, and like the one goes, is further down because the street has a jog in it. So people are parking and covering over that crosswalk thing. It's one of the curb cut ones. And I didn't really realize that there was that 15-foot limit, but people are parking over it. And then I don't know if it's really enough room between the crosswalk and the intersection, but then some cars are parking in between there. And then that kind of gives you visibility problems if you're going south on Georgia at the intersection.
Are those crosswalks, is it painted on the pavement to mark it? Because if it
they're those
then
ones
you would
with
have
that-
no idea it's there.
Those grate things in there, because they just reconstructed that street.
Yeah, you're saying they put the ramp in?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
ADA ramp and, but is the pavement marked?
They're painted crosswalk.
Oh, no, there's not.
And it's not a crosswalk.
Oh, okay.
It's just a ingress or egress.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a
Are you allowed to park in front of those curb cut things, or I wouldn't think so.
I guess common sense would tell me no if you know it's
Yeah,
there,
that's what I'm
but
thinking,
do you know it's
I just
there?
assumed that you couldn't park in front of them. And then the other one is on Georgia and Osborne. People are parking too close to that fire hydrant there, so like if you're coming off of Osborne, you can't really see the visibility.
Well, that really comes down to an enforcement issue.
Yeah.
Not going to OPD.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking if there was like yellow paint, it might.
Well, common sense again. First time the fire truck comes and busts out all their windows to get the fire hydrant, they'll learn.
They'll move.
Well, I'm saying it's
That's an enforcement.
a safety hazard because, like you said, you have poor visibility.
No argument.
Osborne's a fairly traveled street nowadays, so.
Yep.
Fire hydrants are yellow and easy to spot, so, if people know their basic rules of the road, they should know not to park in front of them. You'd hope.
Yeah, it's actually, it's back to that literature we talked about earlier. You're not supposed to park on 10 feet of a fire hydrant, and it's actually 4 feet of a driveway, alley, or blocking the area of a curb removed or lowered for access to the sidewalk, so.
Like I said, I think both of these kind of fit into that, especially that one with the crosswalk,
All enforcement.
It's common sense for people, but a lot of people you see don't have common sense.
Just one thing I want to bring up. I noticed it today. I don't think people, with the flashing pedestrian lights like on Oshkosh Ave and down by the university, people really know when they're flashing that they're supposed to yield. I don't know if we should put an information sign on that post, yield to pedestrian crosswalk.
I just had a bicyclist trying to cross
Yeah.
on Congress there.
Yeah.
Had them activated, and, there's a lot of traffic there.
There's a lot of traffic, and
Nobody
there's
was
no
stopping for
information
'em.
sign on the post that really tells people that they're to yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk. So I'm wondering if just an information sign on the post would help. Because I don't think a lot of people pay attention and
No,
lights are flashing.
That Congress Ave is so congested, I don't know that there's no real fix for that.
Oshkosh Ave might help, though. Because that's
Oshkosh
part of the
Ave.
Wyowash Trail crossing there. And
Well, are you talking Oshkosh Ave, because that's
Congress,
Congress.
sorry.
Okay, confusing me there. Yeah,
It's Congress right by.
It was wall-to-wall traffic at 3:30 this afternoon.
Right.
It's a
But
bad
people hit the
layout.
light so they can cross
Yeah.
the street if they're on their bike or walking, and people don't yield to the walkway. So I think if we had an information sign that just said yield to pedestrians and crosswalk would.
But isn't it supposed to be common knowledge when you learn how to drive that
Yes,
the yellow
but-
flashing lights and the pedestrian crossing sign, you're supposed to yield to the pedestrian?
Yeah, I know, but people don't.
Because we got away from actual verbal signs to symbol signs, and now it sounds like we want to go backwards. I don't know if,
I think just an information.
I think people just need to start paying attention.
Yep.
Yeah. Anything else? We got to wrap this up here because they have a council workshop, so get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Till next time.